Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, participants. Please, can you hear me? Dr. Ogu, please, can you hear me?
Okay, that's you can hear it.
You can hear me. Okay. Good morning, all. You're welcome to the 2022 Institute of Education International Virtual Conference and unveiling of Volume 33 of the Journal of the Institute of Education. My name is Charles Enobong Akpan, and I am the moderator of today's conference. Thank the Almighty God for a beautiful day and the opportunity to serve God and man and to help to better our society by participating in this conference. I welcome you all. I'd like to start off by recognizing very important personalities virtually present here with us. I'll begin by welcoming the chief host of the conference, the 15th Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Professor Charles Arinzechukwu Igwe. You're welcome, Prof. May I also welcome the host, the Director of the Institute of Education, Honorable Professor K. Onyechi. You're welcome, my Director. I'd like to recognize the chairman of today's conference, Professor Obinna Onwujekwe. Professor Obinna Onwujekwe is the Director of Research, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Welcome, Prof. May I recognize the keynote speaker, Professor Amos Soji Aremu. Professor Aremu is the former Sub-Dean, Faculty of Education, University of Ibadan. You're welcome, the chairman. May I recognize the lead paper presenter, Brian Alexander of the Centenary College, Louisiana, United States of America. You're welcome. I'd like at this point to also recognize the special guest of honor, Honorable Celestine Nwale. Honorable Celestine Nwale is the Honorable Commissioner for Abakaliki Capital City Development. He is ably represented by Honorable Dr. Prince Ifeanyi Chukwu Umoke. You're welcome, Honorable. At this point, I would like to recognize the man who put together this event, the chairman of the LOC, Professor Sam Ugoke. Thank you for making it possible for us to assemble here today. You're welcome, Prof. May I now recognize the Dean of the Faculty of Education, the ever agile Professor Joachim Omeje. You're welcome, Prof. I recognize also the Dean of the Faculty of Vocational and Technical Education, Professor Anele. I would also want to recognize all the heads of departments in the Faculty of Education. I will start from the Department of Educational Foundations, Professor Julie Ibia. Professor Uche Ibokwe is the head, Department of Arts Education. Professor Augustine Mole, head, Department of Library, Science and Information. Professor Nkadi Onyegebu is the head of Science, Department of Science Education. Professor Ujumobi is the head of Department of Adult Education. Professor Nkiru Ezebo is the head of the Department of Social Science Education, and Professor Godfrey Ng, head of Human Kinetics and Health Education. May I also recognize our heads of department in the Faculty of Vocational and Technical Education, Professor Ngozi Eze. She is the head Department of Home Economics. Professor Chinyere Obuanya, head Department of Industrial Technical Education. Dr. Ifeanyi Eze, head Department of Agric Education. Dr. Ima Wangu, head Department of Computer and Robotics Education. Dr. Rose Azubike is the head Department of Business Education. We are also graced with the virtual presence of Professor Uju Umo. She is the Director of Academic Planning Unit, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and also our employer, a former member of the University of Nigeria Governing Council. You're welcome, Prof. I would like to also recognize the chairman of plenary sessions, Professor Sam Ogoke and Dr. Edna Ogu. We're expecting that you will do justice to issues as they come up and dissect the papers submitted. May I also recognize the rapporteurs, Dr. Emmanuel Oji and Dr. Felix Dike. I will not fail to recognize all the professors virtually present here with us, and also you, our distinguished participants. May I once again welcome you to the 2022 International Virtual Conference of the Institute of Education. Having recognized all here present with us, we would like to commence with an opening prayer. At this juncture, I would like to invite Reverend Canon Charles Aurelusi to lead us in an opening prayer.
I would like us to commit this conference into the hands of the Almighty God through prayers. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for a privilege to participate in this year's Institute of Education Conference, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, an international virtual conference. It is by your own grace that we are alive today. And by your own power, we are undertaking this great activity. So we call for your presence to come and be with us. We call for your Holy Spirit, for your wisdom, for your guidance throughout this conference. We're asking you to be with every person, starting from the moderator, and all the participants, the awardees, the people that will present papers, lead paper, keynote address. We pray that your hand will be mightily rest upon this university. We pray for the Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles. We pray for the Director of Institute, Prophet K. The Faculty of Education, the great Faculty of Education. We pray for our Dean, Jackie. We're here because you granted us the privilege of life, and so we will not take it for granted. We appreciate you so much and ask you to come and be with us. In this era, education is of paramount interest, and this conference is timely and apt. I pray that the crisis of education within the globe, as we are looking at a way to reconceptualize it, to suit a globally distressed world, we pray for your hands and your enablement, that at the end of this, all glory will be ascribed to your majesty. As your people, we bring out issues that will lead to better development of our nation and the world you have handed over to us. That your blessing might rest upon us, that Satan will be subdued underneath our feet. Thank you, because we know that whenever we call upon you, you answer. And we know you have answered us, for we pray in the name of God the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you very much, Reverend Canon Charles Aurelius. For that short prayer. I'm sorry for the conference having been started off with a prayer. I would like to now invite the chief host, the Vice Chancellor, the 15th Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, to declare the conference open. The Vice Chancellor.
Principal officers of the University of Nigeria here present, our special guest of honor, the Honorable Commissioner for Capital Territory Ebonyi State, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Honorable Celeste Mwale, and Honorable Obi Ene, CEO Rockland Limited. Chairman of the occasion, Professor Obinna Ujekwe, Director, Institute of Education, Honorable Professor K. Onichi, Directors of Institutes and Center, Deans of Faculties, Heads of Departments, the keynote speaker, Professor Emma Soji, the presenter, Professor Brian Alexander, distinguished professors and academics here present, distinguished invited participants, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the press, good morning to you all. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2022 International Virtual Conference of the Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, holding today, the 12th day of October 2022. This event is historic, as the Institute will also be unveiling her journal, The Review of Education, Volume 53, Volume Issue 2. As it is the practice of the Institute to organize conferences annually, the purpose of providing platform for robust intellectual deliberation on topical issues concerning education globally and our nation, Nigeria specifically. The Institute has deemed it fit to organize this year's 2022 International Virtual Conference holding today. Conferees, you will agree with me that the role of education in societies, among other things, includes providing innovative ideas and solutions for meeting contemporary problems facing man and our environment. The global environment today is faced with unprecedented challenges ranging from conflict between nations, such as the ongoing Russian versus Ukraine war, to global environmental problems such as the rising global temperature causing climate change problems. In Nigeria, we have recorded floodings and unprecedented rainfall, rising inflation with depleting food supply, as well as unchecked insecurity challenges, all of which clearly show that our environment is at its all-time high distress level. Consequently, these challenges have negatively impacted on education, causing many nations to cut budgetary allocations to education as they seek to provide more funds towards tackling some of the mentioned problems facing the globe. A specific example of the impact of these environmental challenges causing global distress on education is the cutting short of the educational program for both national and international students studying in Ukraine since the start of the Ukraine versus Russian war. In view of this, the theme of the conference has been aptly captured: reconceptualizing education for a globe in distress, with the sub-themes carefully crafted to guide presentation and discussions on topical issues affecting nations and to provide fresh ideas that can form much needed positive transformations. This theme has been carefully selected to guide conferees and lead scholars' contributions towards providing urgent solutions to some of the problems identified. We believe that that outcomes from these scholarly deliberations will provide solutions for ameliorating some of the existential problems facing various nations globally. This is in line with the mandate of the university by the extension and the institute, among which is providing opportunities and problems for scholars to present educational solutions to identified environmental problems via research outputs. These efforts are in line with the visions and aspirations of the founding fathers of the University of Nigeria, aptly captured in the university motto, which is to restore the dignity of man, as well as produce high-scale labor in education sector. This can not be complete without a sustained, plausible, frank discussions by academics and professionals in various fields on the current issues facing the globe and providing solutions to some of the problems. This necessitated the need to organize these conferences to provide platform for professionals and scholars to deliberate on contemporary issues that will lead to solutions that works. I congratulate the Institute of Education, especially their ever hardworking director, Honorable Professor K. Onyechi, for successfully organizing this conference. And reassure you of my administration's support in assisting the Institute to meet her mandate in line with the university's goal, objectives, and vision. I wish to appreciate our special guest, the chairman of the occasion, the keynote speaker, and lead paper presenters, professors, our students, and the general public who made out time to attend the conference. It is therefore my pleasure to welcome you all once more to the Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka 2022 International Virtual Conference, and wish you all, our invited guests and participants, a fruitful discussion. I therefore declare the conference open. Yours sincerely, Professor C.A. Igwe, Vice Chancellor.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arinze Chukwuigwe, for declaring the conference open. The conference having been declared open by the Vice Chancellor, I am now pleased to invite the chairman of the conference for the chairman's opening remarks. Distinguished participants, I'm pleased to invite Professor Obinna Onwujekwe to please address the conference.
Mr. The Vice Chancellor, University of Nigeria, Director of other established protocols, because we are, for want of time, it's indeed my pleasure to be invited to be the chairman of this very important conference. Our Vice Chancellor has already highlighted all the keys, so that acknowledge this part of research. I think it's an important part of having the framework and having creating an enabling environment for research to be undertaken in the university for the promotion of visibility of individual academics and for the university as a whole. So it's indeed my pleasure to be part of this important conference. And I think without saying more, I think we're going to have a good event today. We have a very distinguished guest lecturer. I'm sure that will do justice to the topic. I think with these few words, I think I welcome everybody to this conference, and they will look forward to an exciting time today. Thank you very much. Over to moderator.
Thank you, Professor Obinna Onwujekwe, the chairman of the conference. Professor Obinna Onwujekwe is the Director of Research, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. We are pleased to have you, sir. Now, I would like to invite the host of the conference, the woman who empowers all the staff of the Institute of Education, who allows her staff latitude to explore their skills. I'm referring to no other person than the amiable, Honorable Professor K.C.N. Onyechi. Please address the conference.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. This is in the form of a welcome address by the Director, Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, on the occasion of our Institute of Education International Virtual Conference and an unveiling of our review of Education Volume 33, Issue 2, holding today on the 12th of October, 2022. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arizechukwu Igwe, Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Pat Ubuku, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Professor Johnson Orama, all principal officers of the university here present, our special guests of honor, Honorable Celestine Wale, the Honorable Commissioner for Capital Territory, Ebonyi State, Honorable OBN CEO, Rockland Limited, Chairman of the occasion, Professor Obinna Onwujekwe, Dean, Faculty of Education, Professor Joachim Omeje, other deans of other faculties here present, directors of institutes and centers here present, heads of departments, keynote speaker, Professor Amos Soji, lead paper presenter, Professor Brian Alexander, distinguished professors and academics here present, distinguished invited participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. I am excited to welcome you all to the 2022 Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka International Virtual Conference. And unveiling of our journal review of holding this day, Wednesday, the 12th of October, 2022. First, I give glory to God whose infinite mercies made it possible for us to successfully organize this conference despite the challenges that tertiary education is facing in Nigeria recently. I especially welcome our noble, affable, and ever supportive Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arizechukwu Igwe, also the Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Pat Ubuku, the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Professor Johnson Orama, and all other principal officers of the university here present. To our distinguished scholars, professors, and other academia here present, my staff who worked hard to ensure that this conference is successfully holding today, our dear students, our international guests, especially the lead paper presenters, Emeritus Professor John Dix and Professor Brian Alexander, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to our 2022 conference holding today. The theme of the conference is captioned, Reconceptualizing Education for a Globe in Distress. This theme has been carefully considered for this conference, taking into cognizance contemporary issues dividing various nations of the world. Today, we are faced with unprecedented global problems ranging from climate change to wars, insecurity issues, rising flood prices, and distressed economies. Unfortunately, some of these problems, such as climate change and insecurity problems, have negatively impacted education globally, by making fractions of funds that would have been available for investments into education. In some states, access to quality education is cut off by violence, civil wars, and extreme climate challenges, such as flooding. To buttress but a little on some of the impacts of the environmental challenges on education, a standout example is the recent flooding in some parts of Pakistan, a densely populated country in the Middle East, and in Kogi State, a state in the north-central part of Nigeria. The floodings have displaced millions of residents, cutting access to their education. Also in Nigeria, paucity of funds and other human factors leading to an inglorious 8-month industrial action by the Academic Staff Union of universities in Nigeria has crippled tertiary education since February this year. Some of these problems seem to be defying current solutions being targeted towards them by various stakeholders and organizations. In view of this, we believe that perhaps the continued existence and lingering of these problems may be connected to the fact that the current solutions being meted out to them are not effectively addressing the problems. If they are indeed addressing the problems facing the world today, the global space would have experienced significant dowsing tension in various sectors mentioned above. With this in mind, the Institute of Education deems it suitable to organize this conference so that contributions, discuss, interactions, and presentations in the conference will provide needed solutions to some of the global problems facing nations of the world. Our belief is that the world needs a better and secure future, and that education has a key role to play in achieving that. Education is the passport to the future for tomorrow, according to Malcolm X, which belongs to those who prepare for it today. Moving forward, this year's conference also hosts the unveiling of the Institute's journal for the year 2022, her review of education, volume 33, issue 2. It is worthy of note that the Institute has consistently maintained yearly publication of intellectual research outputs from various scholars in her journal, The Review of Education. The journal publishes articles of original empirical research, systematic reviews, conference presentations, and opinion papers from scholars after careful blind peer review. Issue 2 of the volume 33 contains 22 article contributions from different scholars, which successfully passed the double-blind review process of the journal for publication. Topics covered in the issue are educational pedagogy, classroom management, educational technology, and ICT and security education. Other topics covered include contributions towards the Millennium Development Goals, environmental education, education literacy, and education for climate change. The volume contains articles from diverse disciplines, offering germane solutions to different educational challenges facing the globe. I encourage all conferees to avail yourself the opportunity of accessing the research outputs published in the journal issue by picking up the journal from the bookshop or from the Institute of Education. We believe that deliberations and solutions offered in scholarly outings such as this conference presents no better opportunity for intellectuals to interact and interface towards providing solutions to global educational problems. I want to encourage all to stay present through the conference and actively participate. I want to particularly encourage students participants to ensure that they present their papers and listen to professional critiques from academics in their various disciplines. This will help your academic growth in the field of research. I want to also encourage participants who are still considering submission of their abstracts to speedily submit and register their paper. The conference's technical session will continue tomorrow, in which some students will have opportunity to present their papers in the conference for review. Finally, the Institute wishes to appreciate the 15th Vice Chancellor in a special manner, Professor Charles Arizechukwu Igwe, for making our time to be with us in this conference and for your support towards organizing our conference. We also want to appreciate the Deputy Vice Chancellor Administration, Professor Patrick Obuko, Deputy Vice Chancellor Academics, Professor Johnson Orama, and other staff of the Office of the Vice Chancellor who contributed in one way or the other towards successfully organizing our conference. I want to appreciate the presence of our special guest of honor, Honorable Celeste Nwane, who is the Commissioner for Capital City Development, Abakaliki, Ebonyi State. We welcome and appreciate you, your honor, for honoring our invitation. My appreciation also goes to our special guest of honor, Obiene, for making our time to be part of this conference. So we appreciate your presence. Let me also especially thank in a special manner the chairman of the occasion, Professor Obinna Amujakwa. So we are grateful for your kindness in honoring our invitation to be the chairman of this occasion and the launcher for our new journal. We also appreciate the Dean, Faculty of Education, Professor Joaquin Ahmed, for your support. Our special appreciation also goes to our erudite and knowledgeable keynote speaker, Professor Emma Soji. We are happy to benefit from your wealth of knowledge and experience. It is only God that will reward you. We appreciate also our lead paper presenter, Professor Brian Alexander, for your time and commitment in responding to our request to be lead paper presenter in this our conference. We are convinced on your ingenuity and hope that our participants will make the most from your presentation. I want also to appreciate directors of various institutes here present, deans of faculties, principal officers of the university, and to all our invited guests who made our time to join us in this conference. I appreciate you all. And to my amiable husband and ever supportive love of my life, Venerable Chijoke Onyechi, and my entire lovely family, I say a big thank you to all of you for standing by me always throughout the preparation and today in particular. I will not end without appreciating the entire staff of Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, especially the Conference Planning Committee led by our own Professor Sam Ugoke. Permit me also to end my speech by appreciating our participants who registered in our 2022 International Conference, especially those who will be presenting papers during the technical session. We wish you all a pleasant time and experience as you join us in the conference. And finally, to God Almighty, I return every thanksgiving, glory, and honor to you for making this day a reality. Thank you all and have a wonderful time throughout the conference. Signed.
Thank you. That was the Director, Institute of Education, Professor K.C.N. Onyechi, who we fondly call Mommy, for that wonderful address. And so, distinguished participants, permit me to breach protocol at this point. I would like to
Hello? Hello? Good
We can hear
morning.
you.
Okay, good morning. My name is Dr. Prince Ifan Achoumoke Emenai. I was detailed and directed by Honorable Commissioner for Capital City Development, Ebonyi State, Chief Honorable Celestine Nwale, to represent him. He is the guest of honor. Honorable Nwale has directed me to donate the sum of 150,000 naira in support of the launching of the magazine. Thank you very much. God bless you all. I also commend the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, our own alumnus, Professor Charles Igwe. I commend also the Director of the Institute, former Commissioner for Education in Anambra State, Professor K. Onyechi, and indeed all the organizers of this conference. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
We can talk. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was the Honorable Celestine Nwale, the Honorable Commissioner for Abakaliki Capital City Development, represented by Honorable Dr. Prince Ifan Achoumoke. We are indeed grateful. I would like the director to specially thank you also.
Yes. Honorable Celestine, having represented by Dr. Prince, I must say that we are very grateful. We thank you. May God reward you. May God bless the works of your hands, and may He replenish you, protect you. You're going out and coming in. Thank you for joining us. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome, Honorable.
Thank you.
At this juncture, distinguished participants, I would like to invite a very delectable gentleman, the Dean of the Faculty of Education, Professor Joachim Omeje, to briefly address this august program. Professor Omeje.
Thank you, the moderator. The Vice Chancellor of this great university, Professor Charles Igwe, the keynote speaker, the Director of Institute of Education, an amiable mommy, Professor K. Onyechi, distinguished professors and academics, conferees, ladies and gentlemen. The theme of this conference, reconceptualizing education for a globe in distress, is timely and urgent in view of the rising distress in the world over. In recent times, we have noticed distress arising from poverty, unemployment, hunger, insurgencies, disasters, and wars. There is no nation that is not currently facing one challenge or the other. It is so bad that developing countries are now moving into recession in their economy. Nigeria, for instance, is facing serious economic crisis presently. Meanwhile, we are yet to recover from the effects of COVID-19 pandemics, and the Russia-Ukraine war has triggered global attention again. It is my hope that this conference will help to address the issues bothering many nations and Nigeria in particular. The theme of this conference, reconceptualizing education for a globe in distress, suggests that education is on the front line of the solution to several challenges facing the world over. But there is need for reconceptualization. That means we all have to see education from another perspective, a solution perspective, and not necessarily a problem perspective. We have to stop creating problems and start looking out for a way out of such problem, that is creating solutions. With this, definitely we are going to come out of all this distressful situation we find ourselves in this country. All sectors of the society should be willing to support solution-based education as a way of fighting global distress, not minding the situation we find ourselves in Nigerian education system or sector presently, most especially as it affects the tertiary institution. Governments, investors, scientists, and scholars should admit that education is the way out of global distress and think and rethink the possible ways of helping education to achieve its mandate. This can only be achieved if we try to make education an environment that is free from distress and challenges. I want to especially thank the Institute of Education for putting up this conference despite the ongoing challenges in the country and the striking situation within the university system. I also want to thank the Vice Chancellor of this great citadel of learning, Professor Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, for supporting the Institute and the conference. I welcome all guests, the invited speakers, the conferees, and then distinguished academics for finding this conference worthy and participating as a means of coming out with a communique at the end of the conference that will definitely help us to reposition our education sector from all the challenges it is experiencing. As the Dean of the Faculty of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, I would like to welcome you once again to the conference and wish you successful and scientific deliberation. Professor Joachim Omeje, the Dean, Faculty of Education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dean, Faculty of Education, University of Nigeria. That was Professor Joachim Omeje. Thank you once again. And now we approach the event. I would like to call up and invite the keynote speaker of today's conference, Professor Amos Oyesoji Arimu. But before I invite him to take the spotlight, I would like to invite Adobe Onwebuchulan to read the citation of the keynote speaker.
Professor Amos Oyesoji Arimu is a professor of counseling, criminal justice, and open distance education from the Faculty of Education, University of Ibadan. He holds joint appointments in the Department of Counseling and Human Development Studies and the Institute of Peace and Strategic Studies. He also teaches in the Faculty of Law of the university. Professor Arimu, who has published extensively in local and international non-predatory journals, has over 150 papers, including 6 books and 28 chapters in books to his credit. His research works are largely interventionistic, given his training as a counseling psychologist. Professor Aremu has consistently contributed and served the university over the years in the following capacities: coordinator of students at undergraduate and master's degree in the Department of Guidance and Counseling from 1998 to 2001, Sub-Dean undergraduate, August 1, 2001 to July 31st, 2003. Student advisor, Faculty of Education, 2003 to 2005. Assistant Warden, Nnamdi Azikiwe Hall, 2003 to 2005. PhD Coordinator, Department of Guidance and Counseling, 2004 to 2006. Sub-Dean Postgraduate Student, August 1st, 2007 to July 31st, 2008. Warden Nnamdi Azikiwe Hall, 2010 to February 10, 2011. Deputy Director Academic, Distance Learning Center, February 11, 2011 to February 11, 2017. Director, Distance Learning Center, February 12, 2017 to February 11, 2020. Acting Director, Center for Open and Distance Education, Osun State University, Osogbo, 15th March 2020 to 14th March 2021. He's currently the Head Department of Counseling and Human Development Studies, University of Ibadan, Chairman Planning and Implementation Committee, West Midlands Open University, Ibadan, March 15 to date. Professor Aremu also served the University of Ibadan as a member, Senate of the University, 2009 to date. Senate Representative for Search Committee for the Vice Chancellor in May-June 2015. Member, Vice Chancellor, Handover Committee, 2015. And member of the following committees in the university: Committee of Provosts, Deans, and Directors, 2017 to 2020. Member, Management Team of the University, 2017 to 2020. Member, Tenders Board, 2017 to 2020. Member, Procurement Committee, 2017 to 2020. And Internal Consultant, Appointment Panel for Chief Security Officer, March 5th, 2019. Outside the university, Professor Aremu has been contributing to national and international development as follows: External Examiner, Obafemi Awolowo University, 2008 till date. External Examiner, Olabisi Onabanjo University, Ago Iwoye, 2011 till date. External Examiner, Ekiti State University, Ado Ekiti, 2015 till date. External Examiner, Adeyemi College of Education, Onjo, 2015 till date. External Examiner, Nigerian Baptist Theological Seminary, Ogbomosho, 2010 till date. Examiner, National Defense College, Abuja, September 2018 till date. External Examiner, University of Zululand, South Africa, February 2020 till date. Member, Education Management Board, Nigerian Baptist Convention, April 2014 to June 30, 2020. Chairman, Education Management Board, Nigerian Baptist Convention, July 1st, 2020 till date. Member, Appointments and Promotions Committee of the Nigerian Baptist Convention Higher Institutions, 2015 till date. Member, Regional Training and Research Institute for Open and Distance Learning, National Open University of Nigeria, Abuja, 2017 till date. Chairman, Planning and Implementation Committee, West Midlands Open University, Ibadan, March 15, 2022 till date. Professor Aremu, who was formerly the National Coordinator, Committee of Directors of Distance Learning Centers and Institutes in dual mode universities in Nigeria, is currently the first Vice President, Open Distance and E-Learning Association of Nigeria, an association he co-founded in May 2020. He is also an Open Distance and E-Learning consultant to Osun State University, Osogbo, and Afe Babalola University, Ado Ekiti. Professor Oyesoji Aremu is a Justice of the Peace Commonwealth Fellow and Visiting Scholar, Institute of Criminal Justice Studies, University of Portsmouth, United Kingdom. African Institute of South Africa Fellow, Fellow, Society for Peace Studies and Practice. He is also a member of many learned societies and journals. He has successfully supervised to completion 31 PhD and over 90 master's degree students. Ladies and gentlemen, join me as we welcome and present an erudite scholar, hardworking and purpose-driven gentleman of the moment, who is also our keynote speaker in this conference, in the person of Professor Amos Oyesoji Aremu, CFJP. You're welcome.
Prof, can you kindly unmute yourself so we can hear you?
Okay, sorry. Yes, good morning, everybody. I want to thank the Institute of Education for organizing this virtual conference. And I must thank very especially the director of the Institute, Professor K. Onyechi, who we've been talking the last few months, and who I'm seeing for the first time virtually. I think I must recognize also, please pardon me, I'm a very poor student of a protocol. I could hear the Vice Chancellor the other time speaking, and the Dean of Education as well. Distinguished colleagues, good morning. I think as highlighted by the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of Education, even in the speech of the director, I think we are all saying the same thing, talking about the distress in the globe, how do we reconceptualize education? I think about April this year to be precise, I was invited to another conference in Nondo, in which I was asked also to speak something along this area, but narrowed down to counseling education in Nigeria. How do we also reconceptualize this? So by the time I got this, I said, wow, it's almost the same thing. The other word is counseling. Here we're talking about education generally. Now, we can't be talking about reconceptualizing education in Nigeria or globally without looking at certain issues. But before then, let me give the plot of my presentation. I'll be talking about the promise and potential in education. Then what is the promise? Has the promise been fulfilled? Then we should be asking ourselves, what went wrong and how did we go wrong? Then we'll now be addressing the need for reconceptualizing education. Then the globe in distress. And we're talking about the globe in distress, we narrow it down to Nigeria, Nigeria in distress. Then from there, we now say that with the distress and everything we are talking about, how can we reconceptualize education for a global distress? Then I conclude. The promise and potential of education. We all know the essence, we all know the promise, we all know the vision, we all know the aspiration of our parents, even we as parents as well, or probably grandparents. And the reason why we were sent to school, let me put it that way. I recall very well, I think I was in an hospital 2-3 days ago to see somebody, and I saw a young boy in his hospital bed singing one of the songs they used to teach us there far back in our days primary school. The song is in Yoruba language, but let me quickly say it's talking about the essence of education. And as he was sleeping, he was singing it, I had to peep in, join in singing. The young boy was good, was very happy, and his self-esteem was high. but that have been able to achieve something in which, of course, the medical doctor could not achieve. In other words, lifting up his self-esteem. That is what education is supposed to be doing. So education should help the individual to be a useful member of the society. It helps the individual as well to help the society. Two things. Before an individual can help the society, he or she himself or herself must be a useful member of that society. If you are not useful, you can't help the society. In other words, it is two-way traffic now. The individual helping the society, then the society helping the individual through education. So if the individual does not help the society does not help the individual through education, the individual cannot come out to help the society. Thus, education makes our society better. Put in a very succinct way, it is a major driver of growth and development of the society. Now look at this. Is education delivering on its mandate? Just look at this. Look at young men holding cutlasses, gadgets, wools, and these were at one time or the other in the school. The question is, do they pass to school, and do the education has any effect in them? We should be interrogating this. So talking about promise fulfilled, access to education is increasing, but not as much as it is expected. We'll talk about this later in my presentation. Open access and so on and so forth. Yeah, almost every time. But if you go back to villages and rural areas, are we saying those children who are supposed to be in the school are there? Most of the time when you travel in the cities, don't you see them hawking? So, and this one are supposed to be in the school. How about the far north? Probably before the issue of kidnapping and insurgency in the far north, we're told that we have about 10 million children out of school. Of recent, UNESCO is saying there is almost 15 million out of school children. And you know why? The question of access is being blocked in that part of the country because of the issue of insecurity and because of the issue of kidnapping, which of course could be kidnapping for commodification. However, individual education society is being questioned. So the question now is, these individuals, are they being properly integrated to the society? And if they are not, we should go back and ask the question, what happens to the education sector or the education they receive? The people are becoming more defiant. Even educated people, educated in code, people are exhibiting maladjusted behaviors. Solutions to economic and societal problems are not forthcoming from the educated individuals. That this will take us back to the political class. Yeah, forget about whether they say the least you can have is that the primary or secondary school education. From them, we will have people who are highly educated in code again. But what happens as well? Now let's look at this. Static education versus dynamic education. And look at this cycle. If education is static, can the society be dynamic? And if you have a dynamic society, can we say the education sector will also be static? I think no. So it is a blend of the two. For our education not to be static, our society has to be dynamic. And if our society is dynamic, it shows that we get the import of it from the education. Now look at what I painted above. Look at those children, how they are studying. Look at the robotic intervention, robotic engineering. Let me tell you this morning I was just driving and I saw an emerging school, primary school, an emerging primary school. In the code, these children were about 14, 15, and they were being taught the kind of an assembly. I said, this is a set of pupils, and we have another set of pupils in another place in a very good environment, ambient environment, air conditioned environment. Can we compare the two, talking about the kind of education they are receiving? We should be talking about this. what went wrong. What education used to be is being challenged. You know that what education used to be is now being challenged. Recall I told you of a conference I attended in Ondo in April this year, where I challenged what counseling psychology used to be. I was telling my audience then that when I was in the university in the 85 during my degree, my professors taught me about counseling psychology, but what they taught me there are no longer useful these days. Talking about the challenges being faced by humanities, if I'm using the same solutions then in counseling psychology to address this current situation, we won't get through it. So that's why I'm going. So we should be looking at what education gave us in the past and what it is today. Recall that in the past there was something like robotic education, robotic engineering, coding system, and so on and so forth. But now we have this. At the time education became static, the contents, approaches, and styles are also not interesting again. You can't ask a primary 4-5 pupil to be learning by rote again these days, where his or counterparts in other places are having more better than kind of talking about robotic education. The kind of education we had in the past was the education that the pupil should not talk. Say after me. The current education is not so again. When my son, my baby was right here, I think his SS3 when they had a midterm break, he came home. Remember, it was during the strike, and he said he wanted to go and play volleyball in the university. I said, no, you cannot go to university to play volleyball because your counterparts are not there, your other people are not there. University is deserted because of the strike. He said, you cannot go. He now asked me, Daddy, give me 3 reasons why I must not go. I said, this is a rebel. In my old days, I will not ask my parents to give me reasons, but it's their word. I have to provide reasons why he could not go and he should not go. After he listened, that is a present education we will receive. It's different from the past education in which it's a kind of, what we call it, that is a zombie education. We are no longer having a zombie education. However, the society education is supposed to serve is changing. And because of this, we need to address this further. Then let's not address the need for reconceptualizing education. How then do we go ahead reconceptualizing education? As I said, education is static, but our society must be dynamic. So if education will deliver on its mandate of helping individuals to integrate well into the society and enable them to be useful members of the society, there's need for education to be reconceptualized, not the way we do it again. Now, the globe in distress. Look at the globe and look at the rope. So the globe is in distress. And what is happening in the globe is coming down to what is happening to us in Nigeria. People talk about the issue of insurgency, the issue of Boko Haram, as if the problem is within the country. No, we cannot be talking about the problem of insurgency in Nigeria as it's affecting education without referring to what happened in Libya after the death of Muammar Gaddafi. We can't be talking of the problem of Boko Haram without referring to what is happening in Mali, in Burkina Faso. I'm talking about the Sahel region. Now look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. These are issues we're talking about the globe in distress. And the consequences of this, we are having it even in Nigeria. Talking about the issue. To say that the world is in crisis is to say the obvious. The disparity between the static education and the dynamic society is a major factor responsible for the distress in the globe, which of course Nigeria is also facing. So the world is facing unprecedented challenges, social, economic, insecurity, poverty, and others driven by accelerating globalization and a faster rate of technological development. As good as technology is, there is also having its effects, its toll on education. Now look at this, the global distress. Look then Nigeria in focus. Look at the entire map of Nigeria. 36 states, and Abuja. And let me quickly just pick 1 or 2 areas and explain. Let's look at Borno State, for example. Look at the question of ISWAP terrorism there, abduction of children, the issue of Boko Haram there, the issue of troops being killed by terrorists. Let's come down to the south. Let's look at Delta State, for example. Look at the question of hoodlums, storming and shopping malls, killing people in Delta State. Let's come to Lagos State. Look at Joint Military Task Force, burnt down streets. Look at the issue of NSAS, the Lekki killing, and so on and so forth. So if you look at this in totality, talking about Nigeria, which part of the country, I'm asking this audience, can we say is free of this threat today in Nigeria? Which part? Which part of the economy or the sector? The Dean of Education talked about this, the issue of strike, how it has affected us. And right now, even if we resume next week, Monday, look at the stress lecturers and professors will go through, trying to fix things or refix things, and look at stress they will put on us. Then added we go back and deliver on the quality mandate of education. These are part of the global distress and Nigeria in focus this time around. She's talking about this. Nigeria's distress manifests in manifold ways, from a badly run economy that has impoverished the populace to fail infrastructure, non-existent health sector, malfunctioning education system, massive unemployment, unprecedented corruption, poverty, security challenges, collapse of the energy sector, to crime. Now, majority of Nigerians now live in distress. That leads to the second question now. I don't know whether you've had this one we call, yeah, of course you must have had that called Japa in Nigeria now. We say, the Nigerian youth, even adults are not Japaing. That's the word that people are not saying now. 2 weeks ago, one of my students who asked the school, I called her to check on her when the school resumed. I said, how's your school faring? He said, Prof, I've closed down my school. I said, what happened? He said, remember that you wrote a referee report for me 2 months ago? I said, yes, I'm traveling. I'm also going to Japa. So in other words, if things are moving fine, are in order, we can't be seeing the kind of things that is happening in Nigeria now. Unfortunately, our own, the challenge we are facing is a benefit to other countries like UK. In other words, the question of economy in the UK is getting better, talking about what they are receiving, what they are realizing from funding education there. But here it's not so. I think it's another thing even our union can also look into. Of course, people are being challenged us in that regard, talking about having a proper cost of education, funding of education in Nigeria. The global distress, an opportunity for reconstitutionalization of education. And then we're talking about this. Talking about reconstitutionalization of education, the changing society is providing myriad opportunities for human advancement. We need to appraise what we teach and how we teach it. I say it, if as a professor or probably a lecturer, you still go back to your lecture room, you still do lecture notes. The one you were taught in the 80s or early 1990s to teach the current students, Generation X, Generation Y, the Sorosoke generation. I think we are missing it. I tell people it's not just a question of pride. When I go to my classes, I either go to classes with my laptop or with my phone, my Android phone in my hand. And I teach the content I want to teach. While teaching, I will even open them talking about the hyperlinks. And that's where the essence of e-learning comes in now. And that will be advocated for women. Even if you don't have complete e-learning, we should have the kind of blended learning through which we can begin to teach the current generation. So we need to adjust to the current realities of the society. You can't go back to the classroom, lecture room, holding notes again. You can't go back to the classroom teaching whatever concept you are teaching as you were taught in the 80s or early 1990s. The world is on a very fast lane, and we must do this as well. Now, reconceptualization of education for a globe in distress. The education that must serve the new reality must be one that must address two far-reaching questions. What are the questions? One, what knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values will today's students need to shape and thrive in their world? We should be addressing that. What knowledge would they need? What skills would they require? What attitudes? Talking about soft skills. Then what values should we inculcate in them that will shape their world? We need to be addressing this, and our education should be addressing this. Then how can our institutional system develop this knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values effectively to build a complete individual? If you go to your classroom, your lecture room, you hold your tempo on the whiteboard, instead of the whiteboard, and you begin to use your tempo on the whiteboard. you can begin to imagine that. Or in some cases, talking about what people call blackboard. Blackboard as longer block, which are referred to as whiteboard. I know of lecture rooms in which they still use chalk to teach. This is not working. Compare this one. Look at the first figure. Also, they are learning. Look at the one in the middle. It's also a classroom. And look at the last one. It's also a classroom. Can we spot the difference? So we must be interrogating this. So what knowledge skills, if we are able to know the knowledge, the skills, attitudes, and values that would require this day, we need to begin to address. Education is not only an end in itself. No, it is a means. Unfortunately, this is being controlled by the system and polity. And we're talking about the polity in the system. So talking about the change of bringing about changes in knowledge, values, and behavior, I'm not quoting Bajaj and Chief. He says that it required to achieve sustainability and stability within and among countries. That's the globe coming together now. So if the distress is global, then it will affect us as a country. So for us not to be affected, it means there must be that ease even in the globe generally. Again, we must be realistic. Let's study the society, trends, and anticipate the future. We need to study the society and anticipate the future. And this is exactly what our education should be doing this time around. We should adjust to current realities in education. We should not keep reinventing the wheel that is taking us backward. That is happening in most public secondary schools, public primary schools, and public universities. We begin to reinvent the wheel, which is not taking us anywhere. We are static, whereas in other places, people are moving, education is moving, and so on and so forth. So imagine a young student going to learn typewriter because of affidavit, or someone learning how to make paper recharge cards. So these are the issues we're talking about. How can our institutional system develop knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values effectively? Technology should aid our education if we are truly serious about education that we address the current global challenges. Let's think and practice beyond the classroom. I've been advocating this. It is called leapfrogging inequality. I repeat, it is called leapfrogging inequality. And three things we have to do to leapfrog inequality in education. We have to open access. I said it the other time, if you look at out-of-school children, the number in millions in the north, even in the south, then we will see what is happening. Then even where access is open, we should address the quality. What is the quality of education we are receiving or we give to our children? What is the relevance of that education to their growth, to their aspirations? These days in primary school, especially in private primary school, some private primary school, they teach children robotic engineering. The question now is, must our children wait till they get to the university to learn aeronautic engineering While in other places like US, UK, Israel, and so on and so forth, they are teaching students in primary school, aeronautic space, aeronautic engineering. Who said they cannot learn it, even in primary schools? So this means even the question of curriculum, which I will address now, we should begin to interrogate the question of curriculum. Our curriculum is not really making the children, our pupils, to think outside the box. And these are the things we should be addressing. So talking about the relevance of the curriculum to future aspiration of our learners and pupils. So there must be that effective partnership between the town and gown. Gone were the days when we just teach in the university. These days, we should look at the needs of the society, the town, and integrate same in our curriculum. There's no point teaching children, teaching your undergraduates that will leave the system and will not be useful to themselves and the society. I think we should be looking inward, thinking inward, and thinking outward as well. They create opportunities for exploration. The grading system should reward innovative and creative thinking. Here, the grading system, 10/10, 90%, 10%, and so on and so forth. In some societies, they are doing away with that type of grading system. Because that grading system is only interrogating cognitive development. That grading system is not addressing affective domains. That grading system is not addressing psychomotor domains. I want to ask you, I want to give you an assignment. We don't know it, of course. As an average secondary school pupil in SS3 or SS2, what he or she wants to do. Out of 10, maybe 1 or 2 will say they want to study medicine. Maybe 1 or 2 will say, well, okay, I want to study law in the university. At least 7 or 8 will tell you, I want to play football, I want to be a footballer. I want to go into robotic engineering. I want to go in aeronautic engineering and so on and so forth. That is being addressed. That will not be addressed by the conventional grading system we parade these days in the country. We need to be interrogating this. Again, you may ask me, then how do we be able to classify students, first class, second class, and third class? For me, imagine we say find wording in learning and character. Learning comes before the character comes before learning. So we should be addressing what are referred to as soft skills. And this we need to do by looking into our curriculum. As I conclude, let me share this story with you. There was a crisis in the community and a man was sent to deliver the message meant to avert the crisis. The messenger was endowed with several victuals and resources that could help out the crisis in the community. A major challenge was that the community where the crises are happening is very far. The challenge is that the messenger is adbent on trekking there rather than using other fast means of transportation. Yes, I don't know whether you get this, what I'm trying to bring now. So if the messenger who is challenged in trekking there, instead of looking at how best, what is the method can I use to get there because of the distance, because of the gulf, you want to go there at all costs, but instead of you using the virtual means of getting there, the current means of getting there, you want to use the whole system of getting there. What is the conclusion? Of course, it will not get there. Then what will become of the community? The community will not progress, it will lag behind. A poster for all of us to put out upon. Let's think together. What do we do now that we should continue? What should we abandon? What needs to be creatively invented afresh? These are posters which I'm giving to us even as I conclude here. Once again, I want to thank you for listening to me and for inviting me online to this conference. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for that erudite and scholarly piece. That was Professor Oyesoji Aremu, the former sub-dean of the Faculty of Education, University of Ibadan. Prof, if I may summarize everything you have just, or the masterpiece you just put down now, in one sentence, I will say, old keys do not open new doors. Thank you very much, Prof. We are indeed blessed to have you. And I want to believe we all benefited from that masterpiece, wonderfully delivered by Professor Oyesoji Aremu. Thank you very much, Prof, once again. And so, distinguished participants, we would have been introducing the lead paper presenter, but unfortunately, he will be coming online a few minutes from now. So I would want us to make progress and move on to other things. Once he is hooked up online, we'll call him for his paper, for him to deliver his paper. Now we will be moving on to presentation of awards. We will be having a few awardees. First on the line being the 15th Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe. But before I call him up for his award to be given to him, I would want to invite the director of the Institute of Education, Professor K. C.N. Onyechi, to read the citation of the Vice Chancellor. Sorry, Dr. Edna Ogu will be taking the citation of the Vice Chancellor. Dr. Edna Ogu.
Thank you very much. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, the DVC admin and academy.
Dr. Edna Ogu, please, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, I have unmuted. Okay. I have unmuted. Yes. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, the DVC admin and academic, other principal officers present, all protocol observed. It is my honor to give the citation of an elegant scholar, a rare gem, Professor Charles Arinze-Chukwu Igwe, the Vice Chancellor, University of Nigeria in Nsukka, a professor and a consultant of soil science, born at Awka, Anambra State, Nigeria in the late 50s. He holds a PhD master's and a bachelor degree in agriculture from UNN. In addition, he also obtained postgraduate diploma in soil science from Agricultural University, Norway. He was the Deputy Vice Chancellor from 2016 to 2018 before ascending to the throne of a Vice Chancellor, University of Nigeria Nsukka in the year 2019. He was the head of department, associate dean, and dean, Faculty of Agricultural Science, and also director of centers at various times. Charles was a visiting professor and a researcher to various universities like Germany, Japan, Italy, France, and Norway. He was a member, University Governing Council, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, external examiner and a professorial assessor in many Nigerian and European universities. He has supervised many students across board, ranging from undergraduates, masters, and PhDs. He has contributed significantly to knowledge in his area of specialty and has also published in many peer-reviewed articles in reputable journals. He is a NORAD Fellow, Fellow Alexander von Humboldt in Germany, a regular associate International Center for Theoretical Physics, Crete, Italy, Fellow Japanese Society for Promotion of Science, winner University of Nigeria Nsukka Vice Chancellor's Faculty and University Prizes from 1992 to 1993, among others. Charles has attracted scientific equipment donations to the university from AVH in 2001 and 2010, respectively. He is a two-time recipient of research from Third World Academy of Sciences. Professor Igwe is married with 4 lovely children. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you an amiable academic giant, a guru, an energetic scholar. He is no other person than Professor Charles Arinzechukwu Igwe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Edna Ogu.
Thank you
for that. I now want to invite Adobe Onwebuchulam to present the award to the Vice Chancellor virtually.
On behalf of the Director, Institute of Education, Professor, both the teaching and non-teaching staff, I, Adobe Onwebuchulam, hereby present this award of excellence in administration and leadership to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, the 15th Vice Chancellor of University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Professor Charles Arinzechukwu Igwe, on the occasion of the 2022 International Virtual Conference, this day, 12th October 2022.
And that is Reverend Canon Charles Orelusi receiving the award on behalf of the Vice Chancellor, Professor Charles Arinzechukwu Igwe. Thank you. Also on the list of recipients, we have Honorable Celestine Wali. Honorable Celestine Wali is the Honorable Commissioner for Abakaliki Capital City Development, Ebonyi State. He is ably represented by Honorable Dr. Prince Umoke. Honorable Dr. Prince Umoke had earlier spoken to us, and because he had other engagements, he had to rush off and drop just a short address before leaving, and also a donation from the Honorable Commissioner. Also, I would like to call on Adobe Onwebuchulam to, on behalf of the Director, present the award to the Honorable Commissioner, now represented by Dr. Felix Dike.
On behalf of the Director, Institute of Education, Professor K. Umechi, and the entire Institute staff, I, Adobe Onwebuchulam, hereby present this award of excellence in peace and political stability to Honorable Celestine Wali on the occasion of our 2022 International Virtual Conference, this day, 12th October 2022.
Thank you very much, the moderator. I want to appreciate the entire management and staff of course the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, starting with the chief host, the Vice Chancellor of the University, the principal officers, and then the Director, Institute of Education, for deeming it fit to give this award to the Honorable Commissioner. I appreciate also the organizers of this conference, and I will deliver the award as given to the Honorable Commissioner, and I convey his regards and appreciation. Once again, Dike Felix Okechukwu accepting the award on behalf of the Honorable Commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Commissioner for Abakaliki Capital City Development, Ebonyi State, Honorable Celestine Wali, represented by Dr. Felix Dike. Also on the list, I want to call on Professor Obinna Onwujekwe, the Director of Research, University of Nigeria. But before then, I will invite Professor Sam Ugwoke to read the citation on the chairman of the occasion.
Short profile of Professor Obinna Onwujekwe. Professor Obinna Onwujekwe is medically qualified professional with MSc and PhD in health economics. He's a member of the University of Nigerian Government Council, professor of economics in epidemiology in the Department of Pharmacology and Therapy,
and professor of health economics, system and policy in the Department of Health Administration and Management, both at the University of Nigeria in Enugu campus. He is an adjunct professor of health policy and system in Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, Yaba, Lagos. He is the director of research in the University of Nigeria, the coordinator of Health Policy Research Group, and the president of Nigerian Health Economics Association. Professor Onwujekwe was the technical facilitator of the 2014 Presidential Summit on Universal Health Coverage in Nigeria, a member of the board of the African Health Economics and Policy Association, and the Health Reform Foundation of Nigeria. He's also the director of Nigerian National Center on Health Policy and System, University of Nigeria, which is part of African Health Observatory Platform on Health Systems. He's a member of the African Advisory Committee on Health Research and Development of WHO, World Health Organization, Africa Regional Office, the Nigerian National Health Research Committee, the Ministerial Expert Advisory Committee on COVID-19, and COVID-19 Socio-Economic Working Group on African Scientific Research and Innovation Council of the African Union. He's also the editor of the African Journal of Health Economics. He has published more than 300 journal articles. He's a fellow of Nigerian Academy of Science. He's also a fellow of the Academy of Medicine Specialists of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure to invite the academic giant, a professor of pharmacoeconomics and pharmacoepidemiology, and also a professor of health economics system and policy, a professor with intimidating profile. I'm talking of no other person other than Professor Obinna Onwujekwe, Idua Professor, erudite professor. You are highly welcome to Lions Day. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. It's my immense pleasure to receive this award in this very nice and epochal conference.
Sam Ugwoke.
Thank you very much.
And now I will invite the Director, Institute of Education, to present the award to the chairman of the occasion.
Okay. To Professor Obinna Onwujekwe, the Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, and Nsukka hereby present you with this award of excellence in academic research and Public Health. To you, Professor Obina Onjogbe. Congratulations.
Prof, you may want to respond to the award.
I've already responded, but I'll say thank you so much for the award, and look forward to working closely with the Institute of Education in making the new frontiers in science and in research. Thank you very much.
Now, finally, on our list of awardees is a two-time Commissioner for Education in Anambra State, Honorable Professor K. Onyechi, presently the Director of Institute of Education. Before the award is presented to her, I will now invite Reverend Canon Charles Aurelius to read the citation to the Director.
Okay. Hello. Thank you. Can I talk? Go ahead. Okay. Standing on the existing protocol, I have the privilege to read this citation and the brief profile of Honorable Professor K. Chinonyelum Onyechi. Honorable K. Professor Chinyelum Nwamaka Onyechi, a professional counselor with special interest in family and marriage, was a two-time Honorable Commissioner for Education in Anambra State. In fact, the longest and best-served Commissioner for Education in Anambra State, 2006 to 2012, and currently the Director, Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Professor K hails from Abetete in the Idemili North local government area of Anambra State. Currently, she is a professor in the Department of Educational Foundation, University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and Director, Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She holds a PhD, MAD, BEd, all in guidance and counseling from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Also NCE in religious studies, Igbo language, and the cultural culture from the then Anambra State College of Education, now Nwafọ Orizu College of Education, Nsugbe, Anambra State. Professor K is a seasoned academic and has used her wealth of experience and knowledge to transform and reposition education to greatest height during her tenure as Commissioner for Education. During her tenure, the education sector in Anambra State won first position in every form of assessment, both nationally and internationally. Also, as part of her contribution and advancement of knowledge, she has published over 70 journal articles in both national and highly reputable international impact factor journals. She has great passion for women and youth development and has contributed immensely to capacity building of women and youth in Nigeria and across the globe through seminars, conference, workshops, and other counseling media. Professor K is a member of over 5 professional bodies such as CASON, NCEP, TRCN, to mention but a few. Professor K has been honored with several awards by various organizations and institutions, such as Award as the Asian Royal Mother, Best Commissioner for Education, Best Commissioner for Education Southeast, Chieftaincy title as Adeje Jemba by Igwe and Council, entire Agulezigbo Developmental Union. Award of Excellence for outstanding contribution to welfare and well-being of Nigeria students. National Merit Award for selfless service and distinguished contribution to education education development in Nigeria. National Parent Teachers Association Award, Good Ambassadors Award of University of Nigeria, Life Membership Award for Outstanding Contribution to Growth and Development of Senior Staff Club by University of Nigeria, UNM First Staff Award, Top 10 Most Influential Female Lecturer of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Award of Excellence as Most Outstanding and Visionary Lecturer by Faculty of Education Student Association, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. She is a devout Christian and a child of God. She belongs to several Christian organizations such as Evangelical Fellowship and Anglican Communion, EFAC, Scripture Union, Mothers Union, Women's Guild in Anglican Communion worldwide. As in Nora, a local evangelist, she has touched lives of many, especially women and downtrodden. She has encouraged them through entrepreneurship education, literacy education to help them cope with hard times. Professor K is a lover of charity work, reading the word of God, teaching, sports, music. She is happily married to a man of God, Venerable Chijoke Onyechi, and the marriage is blessed with wonderful children and many glorious grandchildren, all to the glory of God. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, it's my honor to present to you a mother in Israel, a woman of faith, a progressive-minded aristocrat, a counselor par excellence, a well-seasoned professor, erudite scholar, fondly called K by her lovers, Professor K. Chinayem Onyechi.
Thank you very much.
I will now invite Dr. Uche Uzodimma to present the award to the Director of the Institute of Education.
On behalf of the Institute of Education, also of Nigeria, an award of excellence in leadership and innovative practices presented to Honorable Professor K. Onyechi, Director of the Institute of Education, former Commissioner for Education in the states, the Institute of Education of Nigeria. The occasion of 22 International Visual Conference holding today, 12th October 2022.
Thank you very much. The Director, Professor K.C.N. Onyechi, may like to respond to the award.
Thank you. It's really a great honor and privilege to receive this wonderful award this day, the 12th day of October 2022, from the entire Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. I must say that I'm delighted and I'm happy to receive this award today. And I am right here dedicating this award to God Almighty, who has always seen me through in all that I've done. It's neither by power nor by might, but by the Spirit of the living God. It has led me so far. He's been with me. I'm returning this award to him. And my promise is that God, and prayer that God will continue to give me the grace to continue to grant access to education to many, which is my drive and my passion. And I continue to work for the entire university and to carry education to the nooks and crannies, to make education to reach to the unreached, especially the dropouts. Thank you once again to the entire Institute of Education. I present this award
Thank you all. God bless you all for this wonderful award. I remain grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, the director, Professor K.C.N. Onyechi. Wonderful mommy, you deserve that award indeed. And now, distinguished participants, we've come to a point where you can take your questions, comments for 30 minutes, 28 minutes, while we await the lead paper presenter to join us. Please, at this juncture, if you have any questions for the keynote speaker, I would like you to indicate by raising your hand. You can use the raise your hand function on the Zoom. You can also unmute yourself when you want to ask questions and mute yourself when you are done asking questions. May I repeat myself? If you have any question for the keynote speaker, this is the point when you can either ask your question or make a comment. To do that, explore the raise your hand feature on Zoom app on your system. Thank you. I can see Dr. Felix Dike is raising his hand. Take your question.
Okay, thank you very much, the moderator. Let me start by first thanking God Almighty, thanking the Vice Chancellor, University of Nigeria and Nsukka, Professor Charles Arinze Chukwu Igwe. It is the chief host who has given us like the mega platform we are standing on today. I also want to thank the director, Institute of Education, Professor K. Onyechi, for the mastermind behind the conference that we are enjoying this morning. I want to also thank the LOC members and everybody. What I have is a brief question that I would have loved to direct to the keynote presenter, Professor Amos Oyesoji. I do not know if he's online now, but I believe that we all listened to his keynote presentation. Perhaps other erudite scholars online and present here in the conference may still be able to respond to some of these worries I do have, and I want to pose as a question to his keynote presentation. That is in case he is not readily available. Listening to the keynotes, one of the things that occurred to me greatly is reawakening of our consciousness that we do not need to keep doing or teaching the same kind of content that we've been taught perhaps 20, 30 years ago. That we may need to rethink the kind of education that our children are expected to learn. He made a very classy and beautiful juxtaposition comparing the kinds of education we do receive in Nigeria and in other parts of the world, trying to look at the classroom experience or situation for some children taking lessons in other parts of the world and children taking lessons in perhaps in other parts of the world, using Nigeria as an example, where you can see children in the other angle being taught with some advanced classroom, perhaps some educational, you may call it, what was this called? Instructional materials that are advanced, looking at some contents that are much more advanced and kind of poses some innovative questions like robotics, programming, some innovative contents, and looking at the other angle where children are taught rote learning, memorizing and regurgitating what they've memorized. So my question borders more on, we've seen all these scenarios. We've heard all these worries, but preferring solutions. I think he also did great in talking about how we can address these via curriculum content and some other solutions preferred. But my question goes to looking at practicality. I am of the opinion that we may look at this from, yes, curriculum perspective, I will say curriculum and pedagogy. Then from looking at our institutions, more or less educational institution, and then consciousness reawakening. So my question is, if we are to think in these three dimensions, first looking at the kinds of content in terms of curriculum and pedagogy that should be taught in order to meet contemporary needs of our society today, looking at what we should be doing in terms of institutions, strengthening our institutions, the institutions of various institutions of learning, both from the basic, primary, secondary, and the tertiary institutions of basic learning, and beyond the very, direct institutions of learning, I mean the classrooms, looking at also stakeholders in education, for instance, the ministries in charge of education. You do agree with me that these institutions also, even though they are stakeholders, they play also a key role. For example, the Ministry of Education in Nigeria, having been unable to deal with the ASU strike that has lingered for 8 months, while it has to take the intervention of the parliament to resolve this in very short period. So looking at how do we strengthen these institutions to ensure that we reposition education that will meet contemporary problems that we do have. And then secondly, what kind of things should we be looking at in order to reawaken consciousness in terms of what should be uttermost in the minds of every teacher going into the classroom to give students and learners, pupils, the right kind of learning or education that they will need in order to meet these contemporary problems that seem to defy the old solutions that the old kinds of education that we've been receiving could not prefer plausible solutions to them. So what practical things can we do in terms of curriculum and pedagogy? What kind of things can we be doing to strengthen our institutions and to reawaken our awareness to proffer plausible solutions to the myriads of problems, contemporary problems that need maybe newer solutions? So if I will be able to respond, if I can receive responses from the audience or maybe from other conferees, that would be very nice. Thank you very much. Back to you, the moderator.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Felix Dike. I wouldn't know if anybody here would like to respond to his concerns or questions. You can, or you want to ask or add to the questions. You may wish to raise your hand so that we spotlight you and take your question. Unfortunately, the keynote speaker is offline now, so he may not be able to respond to the question. Okay, we have Dr. Oji. Dr. Oji, You may unmute yourself and speak up.
Okay, thank you, the moderator. I'm most delighted over the theme of this conference. If you look at what is going on around the globe, you agree with me truly that the globe is truly in distress. Mine is just to answer the question of Dr. Felix. One of the questions, I think he gave us two long questions. I look at the first one, which has to do with how do we strengthen the institutions. I think that is quite paramount, because why Nigeria is the way it is because of institutional setbacks occasioned by, people who don't want to be corrected, people who are above board. I think there's need for us to look at how do we strengthen the institutions. That's very important, because without a viral and strong institution, I think whatever one is doing may be negatively affected. In terms of strengthening the institutions, I think first, everything boils down to human being. Who are the people in the institutions? That's the thing we need to ask ourselves. Who are the people heading those institutions? So first, we need to make sure that people heading most of these institutions are well prepared for it. They are prepared, people who are prepared to be there, who have the experiences, who have the wherewithal in terms of the knowledge and skills to be there, who are well prepared in terms of they have gone those leadership trainings that will enable them, perform. That's one. Two is that there should be issue of budgeting cannot be overestimated. Let me put it that way. There's need to increase our budget in the educational system, so that members manning those institutions will not so much bother on how do I get money in order to do this or do that. So that is very important. And make sure that that money, if you make a budget, make sure also you follow up to ensure that that budget, whatever you are giving out to any institution, that is used the way it should, is planned. I think that is very important too, because what we see cases where people are giving money without following up to find out what they use the money for. I think it's very important to look into that direction. I think these are two major areas I'm looking at. Again, like I talked about individuals, we also need to invest more on training and retraining of the teachers. Let me look at the school system as an example. We need to invest more on training and retraining of teachers to ensure that these teachers are not the ones who will go there and be reading notes for the teachers, like the keynote speaker made mention of. They just sit down and be reading notes. That is not teaching. So we need to challenge these students. You need to extrapolate their mental reasoning a little bit, and that's the only way we can get it right. And he even made mention of the issue of grading system. So he talked a number of things, burden on pedagogy, burden on content knowledge, and also on the assessments. What do we even assess? Whereby a teacher is busy asking questions on what is, that cannot, trigger creativity, trigger this thing. So there are questions, high-level questions that should be able to trigger creativity. And he made mention of grading. Grading should be on, you give more marks to creative answers and innovative answers. So I think the keynote speaker actually dealt greatly on the topic, and I give it to him. I think he's a scholar without being told. I saw it here, and all of us actually can attest to that. So that's my humble suggestions, opinion, sorry, as regards to one of the questions asked by Dr. Felix. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Emmanuel Orji, for that insight into the question asked by Dr. Felix Dike. Discussions are still ongoing. If you'd like to join the discussion, please indicate by raising your hand so that we can spotlight you. Questions, insights, opinion, they are all welcome. Okay. I would now, since we do not have more questions coming forward, we may have to go on a 10 minutes recess. When we come, 5 minutes recess, sorry. When we come back, we'll continue with the discussion and also we'll be expecting that by then the leaf paper presenter would have joined us, so he delivers his paper. Thank you and stay tuned.
Hey, everybody.
Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me?
International.
If you can hear me, you can say so in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and say hello back.
We can hear you. Hello.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
we can hear you, Brian.
Terrific.
I'm there. Can hear you.
Shall I begin?
Yes, you can.
Very good. Let me share my screen.
Adjust your screen.
Hello? Brian, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, you're welcome to the 2022 International Virtual Conference of the Institute of Education, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Dear participants, may I introduce the lead paper presenter, Brian Alexander. You're welcome. You may now take the floor.
Thank you so much. And I should say, good morning to everybody.
Sorry, may I?
Please.
Sorry, may I interrupt you? Before we take the lead paper presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Felix Dike to read the citation on the lead paper presenter. Dr. Felix.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Protocols already observed. I want to most graciously appreciate Professor Brian. Welcome. I'll be brief. Actually, for our conferees, if you may not know, Brian joined us from Louisiana, and I think this is around 6:30 a.m. and okay, no, 7 after 7 a.m. So I really appreciate you staying up, waking up early to join us in the conference. Brian, welcome. To give a citation, Brian Alexander, an award-winning internationally known futurist, a researcher, writer, speaker, and consultant, and a teacher working in the field of higher education's future. Brian was born and raised in New York City. He earned his bachelor's, master's, and PhD degrees from the University of Michigan. Brian began his career as an assistant professor of English at Centenary College of Louisiana before moving to Vermont to lead the Center of Educational Technology at Middlebrook College. He then worked for many years for the National Institute of Technology in liberal education as a senior director. From 2002 to 2014, Brian worked with the National Institute for Technology in Liberal Education, a nonprofit working to help small colleges and universities best integrate digital technologies. With NATO, he held several roles, which include co-director of Regional Education and Technology Center, director of Emerging Technologies, and senior research fellow. Over these years, Brian helped develop and support the nonprofit. He grew peer networks, consulted and conducted sustained research agenda, which primarily focused on youth. In 2013, Brian began his independent consultancy as a higher education futurist. In academia, Brian's work written before COVID described the possibilities and challenges of pandemic upon higher education. In 2021, Alexander contributed a chapter to the book titled Technology and Education in a Post-Truth Society from Fake News, Data Fixification and Mass Surveillance on the Death of Trust. Alexander is currently one of the 9 members of Association of Professional Fisheries International Board. Brian speaks widely and publishes frequently with articles appearing in venues including the Atlantic Monthly, Inside Higher Education. He has been interviewed by and featured in the Washington Post, the MSNBC, the Wall Street Journal, the famous Wall Street Journal we do know in the US, the US News and World Report, the National Public Radio in 2017 and 5 times in 2020, the Chronicles of Education in 2016 and in 2020, the Atlantic Monthly, the Reuters Times Higher Education, the National Association of College and University Business Officers, Pew Research, Campus Technology, the Hustle, Minnesota Public Radio, USA Today, and the Connected Learning Alliances, among many others. Brian recently published a book titled Academia Next, The Futures of Higher Education for Johns Hopkins University Press in 2020. Just a little bit to pause it here. I remember when I was still young, one of the institutions that enticed me so much was Johns Hopkins, because my role model then, Benjamin John Hopkins, has developed many giants in the world literary space. So it's very, very innovative and enriching to hear that you've contributed immensely to Johns Hopkins. Brian has also won an Association of Professional Fisheries Award. His next book, which is Universities on Fire, Higher Education in the Age of Climate Crisis, is forthcoming from Johns Hopkins. His 2 other recent books are Gearing Up for Learning Beyond K-12 and the New Digital Storytelling, which is its second edition. Brian is currently a senior scholar at Georgetown University and teaches graduate seminars in learning, design, and technology program. Conferees, ladies and gentlemen, please join me to welcome to address us, to give the lead paper presentation, Sir Brian Alexander. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you so much for that incredibly generous introduction, Dr. DK. That makes me feel a bit tired just hearing all of that. And greetings to everybody from the East Coast of the United States. It's a pleasure to get to connect with each of you. I hope I can hear from you after my remarks, which will, my focus here is to speak to the future of higher education. The theme of your conference is reconceptualizing education for a globe in distress. I think you'll find that, I hope you'll find that my remarks will speak to that theme very closely. So let me begin with a slide. I hope you can all see this okay. This is from elsewhere in Africa. This is from Egypt. I just like the fact that they call themselves Future University. So my job is to help higher education think about what's next. And I work with universities all around the world on this subject, along with working with governments and companies to help think about this. There's a popular meme that asks what a futurist is. And it works through this whole series of options, some of which are pretty funny and some of which are pretty true. I really like the bottom two right ones that I try to follow, but also instill curiosity. And I try and put pieces together to give us a picture of where we might be headed. I do all this online with a whole bunch of different projects, including a blog and a weekly discussion. I'll be happy to talk about that later if you like. The key thing I want you to know is that I do this through a lot of research, continuous research involving an awful lot of people. This slide here just shows some of the trends that we track in all of this work. So to begin with, thinking about some of the major forces reshaping higher education, especially in this very difficult world. Let me zoom out a bit to the biggest scale and emphasize one of the major forces, which is increasing globalization of higher education. That is, for the past roughly 30 years, we've seen more and more students moving across international borders, more faculty collaborating across national borders. If you think about this, the ideal state would be a university which is inherently transnational. To set foot on that campus would be to hear multiple languages, to see multiple ethnicities, to witness multiple religions and traditions and so on. And so there are a lot of reasons behind this, which I'm happy to talk about, but this is one major trend. Almost every trend reshaping higher education also elicits its opposite. So we also have the idea, what I've nicknamed the national college idea, and that is that a university or college should focus on local traditions, local ways of knowing, perhaps local religions or mythologies or folkways, or just local businesses, and that to focus on the globe would be to misplace its mission. And there are politics behind that. You can see this in multiple continents. Here, for example, North America, South America, and Europe are represented, and there are other reasons as well. But if you put all of these together, we have two opposed forces for the future of higher education, and they play out in different ways. For example, we've seen in South Africa, as well as Holland, cries to not use English as a language of instruction, but instead to have a local language. And you will see this play out in multiple forces and multiple dimensions. A related note to this is the impact of geopolitical division on higher education. Now, I've been speaking about this for more than a decade. Unfortunately, this is becoming all too present right now. The biggest geopolitical division on the planet is, I believe, the struggle between the United States and China, which is not just an ideological and market competition, but also it's a struggle for influence around the world. So what you see here, for example, is a map of China's One Belt, One Road. We can generate similar maps for American involvement around the world. This impacts higher education most directly when both nations and their allies seek to involve and support academics in multiple countries, including those in Africa, as well as Europe and South America. We can also see it indirectly in the way that the world is breaking up into different competing blocks. More vividly right now is the division between Russia and its handful of allies in the rest of the world, which also plays out similarly. For example, there are debates among European universities if they should maintain academic connections to those in Russia. We've also seen Russian academics either trying to leave the country or trying to take on independent positions. And of course, we've seen a larger problem too of academics trying to support academics in Ukraine. So you can see higher education is involved in these major geopolitical divisions. If we're thinking about a world in crisis, this is one of those dimensions. Let me add a different trend, one that is also reshaping our future that we have to think about very carefully. And the trend is simple. It's often just called the demographic transition. It goes like this. Every society around the world that proceeds through development, that goes through modernization, at the other end of it, they have far fewer children and they have more elders who live longer lifespans. And this has happened on every continent. This happens in almost every single society. This here will give you a quick glance at population growth and how in the middle of the 20th century, it reached a kind of peak and then has dribbled down every year since. This plays out unevenly. So for example, we could take a look at Nigeria and we could do a quick analysis of its demographics, and we can find that Nigeria produces a lot of children. This chart here works by ages. The bottom slice is age 0 to 4, then age 5 to 9, and so on. And you can see that in Nigeria, we have a very traditional population pattern, a lot of children, and then slightly smaller number of teenagers, a slightly smaller number of people in their 20s, and so on. And this is what most of the world looked like until about 1910, 1920. This is what a population looks like after it goes through the demographic transition. I picked Germany as just one example. You can see there are children, but then there's a greater number of people in their 20s. And the biggest population is people in their 50s. This has implications for all kinds of features of society, everything from economics to public services to what happens to war fighting. But for higher education, it really transforms us. It means that the number of traditional age undergraduates, aged roughly 18 to 21, that pool is beginning to shrink around the world. And it means also that it gives us the opportunity to perhaps teach more and more adult learners and perhaps to focus on teaching seniors. Now, this is uneven around the world. Now, just a quick glance at this map, the nations that are colored green, yellow, orange, those are the ones that have gone through this process and are producing fewer children. And you can see, just looking around the world, you look at Europe, which is seeing its population shrink. You can see Russia, all of China, almost all of North and South America, Australia, but some places in the world are still producing kids, and those are the ones that are colored blue. Let me just zoom in on that. You can see that includes Nigeria, but also a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, parts of the Middle East, a couple of countries in Asia. But in many ways, sub-Saharan Africa is the world's center for producing children. This means, among other things, that you may see increased competition for your students from the rest of the world as they seek more and more teenagers. Hopefully, that'll mean more partnerships and more support. I want to keep moving on. Another force that is reshaping higher education, and this is one that is occurring around the world, is a shift in enrollment, and that is what classes students take. Generally speaking, we're seeing a global current by which students are more likely to take more classes in STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, and math, more classes in medicine and all of healthcare, and fewer classes in the humanities. So this is looking at the United States to pick an example of which we have a lot of data. If you look at the top right of this graph, those are the fields that are really growing in terms of offering undergraduate degrees. And you can see they're pretty typical: computer science, nursing, exercise science, computer science, that kind of thing. And you can see they're growing enormously. I mean, these are fields that are growing 25, 50, 100% in numbers. But then you look in the bottom left and you can see the fields that are shrinking. And again, they follow the same pattern: languages, English, history, area studies, humanities, religion. So what you're seeing is a major, major trend. And this plays out differently in individual campuses, but the overall shape is pretty clear. So it makes you think, looking ahead, where are you going to be hiring faculty? Where are you going to be spending resources? What kind of curricula will be developed? It tends to follow this pattern. One more trend, and this brings us back to the world in distress aspect, has to do with economic inequality. And this varies from country to country, but the overall pattern is very, very important. Some nations that were in Europe and in North America that led the development process have been experiencing increasing economic inequality for the past roughly 70 years. You can see from this graph, this is a historical arc. The middle of this graph, you can see these societies from about 1950 to about 1985 were fairly more equal economically, but starting around 1985, they started becoming more unequal. And that arc continues. And this matters for all kinds of reasons, but one of the reasons this matters in higher education globally is it means that universities in these countries may be more dependent on the very wealthy, but it also means that students are more concerned about the future they're heading into. Now, there are other areas where the middle class has grown, and you think, for example, about Mexico or lots of Southeast Asia, and those are areas which are benefiting from this process. And those are areas where higher education is more or less a straight line to the middle class. I want to touch on technology. And there are so many things we can talk about when it comes to technology and higher education. I wanted to mention a few things. One is we've seen over the past 10 years, the increasing complexity in the classroom. Now, this varies from discipline to discipline, university to university, nation to nation. But a key thing that we saw before the pandemic struck was more use of technology, both for completely online education, but also more software, more hardware involved in the physical classroom. Learning management systems, virtual displays, tablet computers. It depends, again, on the curriculum. It depends on the institution, depends on resources. But we've been seeing more and more of that. And COVID increased this to the extent that higher education moved completely online. That added more technology to our work. But also when we started blending classrooms, that made classrooms even more complicated. So for example, last night I was teaching a class at Georgetown University, face-to-face, people were gathered around the table, but at the same time, we had remote learners. We had students who were in New York, one student who was in China, and they were all present because we had microphones, we had cameras, we had monitors, we had Zoom all set up. That makes for a more complicated, more expensive, more challenging classroom, as well as a more rewarding one. We've seen one side effect of the pandemic, as well as all this increased use of technology, is a focus on improving the quality of education. And I found this in every single nation that I visited over the past 20 years, without exception. Everybody in higher education, everybody outside of education really wants classroom instruction to improve in quality for different reasons and in different ways and using different techniques, but this is pretty universal and pretty steady. The challenge of this is where there are resource limitations. What do you do when faculty are overworked? What do you do when you don't have supporting budgets? How do you improve quality in terms of this too, without becoming a humanitarian disaster? But that drive is still there. Now, these classrooms can change in various ways, and the classes change in various ways. I mentioned the classroom I was teaching in last night, which had a blend of face-to-face students and online students. We can call that hybrid or high flex, but this seems increasingly likely, especially as we have students who are in physical distress or physically removed and can't actually make it to a campus. Also, when we try to teach classes between campuses, and that is to have classes that are shared across universities or indeed across nations. We can think of this as inter-campus teaching. So for example, if we have one university that has a professor teaching the Korean language, and around that university are 20 universities that do not teach Korean, but they may have some students who are interested. If that one university can share that class among the 20 others, then that might be a great resource, which lets all those 20 expand their curricula that much. There are a lot of benefits to this, and I'll be happy to talk about that later. We also have the huge push for more individualized learning. That is using digital technology to help follow students on their individual paths, perhaps insofar as customizing a curriculum or customizing pedagogy. I'm conscious of time and I need to keep pushing on. So please, I'm ready for, I'll ask for questions, but I would love to say more about each of these points. One further aspect that we learned from the pandemic was the powerful role of instructional design and instructional designers. That is, think back to early 2020. I talked to a lot of faculty who said, how do I teach online? What is Zoom? What am I doing? And I could point out, luckily, we have a field of instructional design that goes back to the 1980s with scholarship, practices, best practices, and we can draw on that. So this field is increasingly becoming part of higher education. There are a few other dimensions I want to mention, and some of these, I think, help both cause distress, but also help ameliorate distress. One of them is the shift towards open. By that, I mean open education resources and open scholarship, as well as open teaching. Open education resources, I think you all know, those are resources that are free or very cheap, easy to access. Open scholarship is the same for scholarly literature, especially scholarly journal articles. Open teaching is sharing one's practice, either by Zoom or by Twitter or by blogs or by TikTok or YouTube or WhatsApp, but just taking the classroom doors and opening them up so that people can see what you're up to. All of these have been progressing incrementally year by year. There's more content available, more practices available, and I think these are a huge benefit for the global South and for developing nations in general. getting more and more access to more and more content. We also have the issue of data and data analytics. That is, as our students move through a university, as they take classes, as they apply to universities, as they write papers, they generate more and more data. And we have the interesting question of how we can use that and use that well. We already have cases where we figured out how to use student data to improve student advising, to help students work their way through a course catalog. But we also have anxiety about what this could mean if that data is collected unjustly, perhaps representing pre-existing historical biases or marginalizing students. We also have potentially an enormous transformation in the computing paradigm, potentially. We have the combination of virtual reality with augmented reality, which we can call mixed reality or extended reality. The key thing here is technology that blends the virtual and the in-person almost seamlessly. There are a lot of projects. I'd be happy to talk about them. The reason I mention this is because this could conceivably transform all computing in higher education. Imagine, for example, that you get to type in your emails by using a virtual keyboard in front of your hands, that you get to partake in a Zoom call entirely in glasses. It might be that you use voice and gesture to communicate. It may become that large, or it may become a niche. We don't know yet. Facebook is one company. Microsoft is pushing for this. Magic Leap is a small startup pushing for this. HP is pushing for this, but we don't know how large it'll be. We've seen many failures in the past. Some of you might remember Second Life, which never succeeded in winning a large audience. We know that 3D movies and 3D TV have failed commercially. So this may end up just being a niche for certain features and certain functions. Dr. DK, how much time do I have left before I go further?
The moderator said, but I think you can
you have about
15
minutes more.
Excellent, excellent.
Just go ahead. Just go ahead.
Okay, well, I don't want to obliterate people, and I don't want to mess with your schedule too much. So again, I will have time for questions, which is what I really like. So if you want to speak about XR, I'm ready for that at the end. Another feature of technology is automation. And by that, I mean the combination of robotics and artificial intelligence. And there's a lot to say about this. On the big picture, we have to think about our relationship to automation. And that may play out in 3 different ways. One is we may see technology creating a lot of unemployment. That is, if we use robotics combined with AI to take care of a lot of jobs, everything from taxi drivers to restaurant workers, to lawyers, to foreign language teachers, we may see widespread unemployment. That's one possibility. Second possibility is that we'll see the creation of a large number of new jobs and careers based on that kind of automation. Think about people in philosophy and religion who will get to work with AI and ethics. Think about people who will get to help train and build AI and monitor robotics. That's another possibility. The third possibility is that automation won't be able to succeed on its own, that instead it'll just work closely with each of us. So if I'm teaching a political science class, I may run an AI with me that helps, for example, analyze my students' behavior. I can train it on a data set of all the students who have taken that class before and help use it to advise my students. When I teach my students how to analyze data sets for, say, voting, they have to use AI in order to help make sense of it. And it may be that some of my students are physically present in the form of telepresence robots. Each of these is a possible future. And it may be that we'll see this, all 3 of these play out in different forms. Each of these impacts higher education. So think, for example, if we have widespread unemployment, that shifts the nature of what the university is for. If there are fewer jobs and people are working less, what are we preparing students for? If, on the other hand, we have new careers and new jobs, then we have to think about our curriculum and what we're preparing our students for. And if our students will end up working very closely with automation, then again, we have to prepare them for that. This is at a grand level. If we zero in a little more closely into university operations, we have to think about the way that automation can impact this directly. For example, There are multiple AI-based language learning projects. The most famous is the mobile app Duolingo. Will universities use that to expand what they teach? I mentioned before the example of teaching Korean, right? Not a high demand field outside of Korea, but perhaps we can have that automated. So instead of having a human instructor, we have an AI who teaches that. Another is that we can change the way instruction actually works. We might be able to have instructors who use AI in the classroom to do some of their classic functions, which then frees them up to do more things. For example, teaching writing. We might be able to have AI that can give really quick feedback on basic level things, grammar and spelling, but also basics of style. And then that frees up the instructor for more advanced discussions and conversations. We could also simply replace teachers. So instead of having a professor who teaches French, we could outsource that to software. And we have the question of cheating, which becomes different. There are software that generates text very easily. Programs like GPT-3 can generate paragraphs and pages of writing. So all of these are challenges right now for higher education. But those aren't the biggest challenges. I want to touch on the biggest one right now. This is the subject of my forthcoming book, which has to do with climate change. What you're looking at right here is a weather observatory in the United States. The United States is a very, very rich country, and yet we are abandoning this observatory. It is right next to the Atlantic Ocean, and the US Weather Service decided that it was not worthwhile to move or protect this weather station, but instead it will just be given over to the rising seas. There are all kinds of ways that climate change impacts higher education. Just really briefly, one is the physical grounds. So if you're in an area such as a lot of Nigeria, you're experiencing rising temperatures and rising humidity, what happens when you get to a point where being outside is actively dangerous to people's health? If you're in a nation such as Bangladesh, where you have universities that are right on an ocean, what happens when your campus is facing being flooded on a regular basis? If you're in a campus that is on a desert's edge, such as in Egypt, there are several campuses like this, and you see the deserts beginning to expand, what do you do with your physical plant? Moreover, if you think about this, do you try to change the vehicles that are allowed on your campus? Do we see, for example, students calling for any car or bus driving that uses petroleum to be banned or at least fined for being on campus? And what happens when we see political movements on campus? When the Greta Thunberg generation comes to our universities, what will they demand that we do in order to fight the climate crisis? This is just in the physical campus aspect. You can think about our research. Already there are African researchers working on climate change across the curriculum, from biology to earth science to chemistry and meteorology, but also in sociology, psychology, also political science and the arts, trying to understand what this crisis means. And that plays out in teaching. I mean, will we be teaching more and more classes? Again, Greta Thunberg's generation comes to your campus. Are they going to be satisfied with your offerings on climate change, or will they want more? And beyond that, we think about the relationship between a campus and its local community, its city, its county, and will they work together to either respond to climate problems? For example, will you share cooling shelters? Or will it be opposition or political opposition if one sets up solar arrays or wind turbines and the other does not? On top of that, we have the interaction with the rest of the world. To what extent do students and faculty participate in the overall crisis? Will they try to urge governments to change their behavior? Will they try to work with major international companies? Will they try to mobilize students to fight climate change? I mean, there are many, many levels for this kind of connection. On an even bigger level, we could think about how a campus responds. This is a very, very simple chart. On the very top is the idea that we want to basically protect and conserve our universities. The sea levels may be rising, temperatures may be rising, there may be climate migration, but we want to protect what we have. We want to protect our physical buildings, we want to protect our population, we want to protect the knowledge that we share. Or we want to adapt. So, for example, we might start offering different kinds of food. We might offer more classes. We might start offering more service learning opportunities for our students. We may start protecting our campuses with walls or elevating buildings as the world changes. Or on the right, we might decide to participate in the struggle against climate change. We might, for example, decide to have faculty not use cars on campus if they do that, as they do in some countries. We might decide to outsource our power supply to something that is more renewable, such as hydro or solar or wind. Or on the bottom of this chart, do we actually move? Do we move our campuses out of danger zones into zones that are more safe? I mentioned Bangladesh, for example. There are universities on the Indian Ocean's coastline. Do they relocate up north into the hinterlands of the country? In Nigeria, do you see, for example, campuses move to cooler areas, or do you see them move to other countries completely? One particular aspect, which I know matters a great deal, has to do with what happens to academic travel. And that is if a professor or a staff member or a student flies from their university to another country, they're burning a lot of CO2. You know, they're exacerbating climate change. Do faculty end up traveling less? Do we, for example, travel locally instead? Do we use conferences like this right now with Zoom in order to reduce that? This is a very thorny issue. It doesn't always work out. Putting all these together, this is a very challenging world. We can imagine a few different trends that are starting to play out and having impact. We can see more and more digitalization, that is, campuses doing more and more work with digital technologies, faculty doing more research, students doing more learning, and so on. We might see our buildings change. As we build new buildings or we renovate old ones, we could see them respond to COVID, for example, by having more windows, more doors, bigger windows, and bigger doors for ventilation. To the extent that our students have been online instead of face-to-face, we might see them struggling with in-person socialization. I've nicknamed this introvert culture, but this might become a new burden for higher education to bear, where we may have to help students see their way forward to meeting people. We may have to train them like they used to do in secondary school. On top of this, we may have more and more planning for a climate crisis. I hope so. Beyond that, we may also have just a cycle of constant innovation trying to meet all these issues. As our students come to us with more mental and perhaps physical challenges, how do we offer services to support them? As we think about the climate crisis, how do we change our curriculum, our pedagogy, our research? I think we'll be seeing more and more innovation. Indeed, this world becomes more challenging. There's a military term called VUCA, which is a world that is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. How does higher education proceed in a VUCA world? In order to proceed, I'd like you to think about the trends that I've mentioned and to ask yourself which of these will have the biggest impact on your work and on your university. Then to ask which of these is the hardest to predict, which is the most chaotic. And I want to leave you with positive notes. One of the side effects of the pandemic experience for me has been, for a lot of academics, discovering that students can be co-creators. That is, the student experience is so powerful. I mean, imagine being 18 years old. Imagine being 16 years old and the pandemic strikes. The students who experience that can give us precious insight into how to organize a university. I think that's a source of a great deal of wisdom and knowledge. A second is we learned how to collaborate more and more extensively within academia, between universities, but also between academia and the rest of the world. That collaboration can be a superpower. I've also seen universities around the world rededicate themselves to teaching and learning, which I think is just a fantastic thing we should celebrate. And also doing all of this with a sense of justice and equity, which is also very powerful. I want to leave with the words of an Indian writer who I admire, Arundhati Roy. She wrote 2 years ago about the pandemic, and she wrote it in these terms. The pandemic is a portal, a gateway between one world and the next. We can choose to walk through it, dragging the carcasses of our prejudice and hatred, our avarice, our data banks and dead ideas, our dead rivers and smoky skies behind us. Or we can walk through lightly with little luggage, ready to imagine another world and ready to fight for it. This is the world that you get to make. Hopefully, we can make this magnificent together. Thank you very much. I'd like to hear from you all. I'd like to hear from your questions and your thoughts.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brian Alexander, for that wonderful masterpiece. We'd like to take
Barry Sedman, can you please unmute yourself? Barry Sedman, can you please unmute yourself?
Sorry, you may want to respond by asking questions, showing insights, by raising your hand. You can use the raise your hand feature on your device so that we can spotlight you.
Sorry, I would also be happy to answer any questions that you ask in chat. I'd be happy to read those out loud if you're more comfortable with that. And I'd also be happy to go back to any point in this presentation and explain what I'm talking about, or to say more about it. Dr. DK.
Yes, Dr. Felix, do you have any question?
Okay, yes, I do. First, I must appreciate.
Unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, which is quite detailed, looking at the future of higher education, future of education from a higher education perspective globally. But quickly, I want to, I think I'm a lover of graphs, demographics, and some of your work, which you showed on the demographics involving various countries are quite interesting. And what caught my mind was a trend showing that fewer, or rather countries that have gone through various stages of development normally have this feature of having fewer younger persons and more of the advanced. I think logically, this speaks to a country that will have more of technocrats or those in the advanced, most productive ages. And looking at or juxtaposing this with most countries in Africa, it takes an example of Nigeria, of course. The demographics also show that in Nigeria, to be precise, we do have more of the opposite kind of more persons in the that are very much younger. Looking at it very quickly and also interrogating that over time, perhaps, is it possible that even though we may do have very large number of young persons that could be as well productive, is there a way to tweak this trend and still be able to tap into some of the things or features, or perhaps some of the things that we do need to drive needed progress in terms of development that may be much needed in the developing countries, okay? Or must we still, for instance, still wait until we now get to the level where we will now have more of the aged people, which I think may take a lot of time. So are there tips on what can be done to tweak this and still be able to leapfrog very rapidly And then secondly, I want to also have your views on the impact that technology can have. If you're conversant recently, one of the major social media giant, Facebook, has integrated most of their outlets into Meta, and we now do have visual realities and even mixed reality, where you have a mixture of the. In fact, you can now have visual classrooms where a teacher may not even be needed. And in one of the conferences I do attend about transformative learning, also co-hosted by John Dix, he's unfortunately not present here, where they, to a very great extent, talked about the future of education, what we are looking at presently, how substituting the physical teacher in the classroom with some of these visual teachers, maybe even robots, AI-powered classrooms, which of course are very useful, but could be also has its dangers. So we have a lot of scholars that debated on the pluses and the minuses, but I would love to have your views on this, because one of the things I do believe is that even though a classroom may be much, maybe more productive when you equip it with a lot of technological driven gadgets, and but then you still need the presence of a teacher that may be able to attend to the soft skills, emotion, empathy, these kind of things. It is not surprising to see that in some of the developed countries, you have some of these subjects like technology, maybe nursing, taking the top notch of what they do focus on than the languages that are. So what are your thoughts on this? First is on the population demographics, and secondly on substituting the teacher with some technological gadgets.
Those are terrific questions, Felix, if I can call you Felix. First of all, for demographics, thank you for catching that. Not everybody does. Demographics often makes people uneasy or uncomfortable. Oh, in the chat, someone wanted to see my cat. So here is the cat. She will say hi to you. She is, whenever I'm on video, she shows up. So there, I hope you're happy with this. The transition I described is almost irreversible. A few countries have tried to change the demographic transition, and they have all failed. Singapore, Denmark, Hungary, and the reasons are pretty clear. Once women have enough education, once women have enough access to careers, and once women have some degree of reproductive autonomy, they tend to have far fewer children. And it's very, very hard to switch that around. If you would like to find something that's very entertaining, go to YouTube and look for the commercials that the Danish government had made in order to convince Danish citizens to have more kids. The commercial, they didn't work out, but the commercials are very funny. I think for a country like Nigeria, or any of the African nations that are going through development, I think that part of the tweaking you can do, as you said, Felix, is to try to have more and more education for women. And that really pushes the demographic transition forward. In the meantime, I think you have some interesting advantages. I mentioned briefly that your population will be very attractive to world universities who will want to have perhaps more and more students from Nigeria and other countries go to their campuses. Indeed, one of my students in one of my Georgetown classes is from Nigeria right now. You may also see more partnerships, and that is, you may see foundations or governments or companies partnering with Nigerian and other African high schools to try to improve college preparation, or partnering with campuses in order to be able to teach more students. And a third option is that you may just see more and more faculty partnerships trying to teach classes collaboratively. Imagine, for example, a class on Roman history taught by a university in Italy and a university in Ethiopia. They would have very, very different perspectives, and it would make for some fascinating conversation. again, that intercampus class aspect. I think right now that demographic transition would take a generation to unfold, 30 plus years. So this is the period you have to really focus on. When it comes to the remote presence in the classroom, it really depends on the learner and it depends on the subject. I think everybody pretty much agrees that having a teacher in person, having Dr. Orji, for example, or Professor Ogwoke in the classroom has a bigger impact than being online. Just more emotionally powerful, more complex, makes a bigger impact. But we can't always afford that. And that can save money, that can save carbon to have a remote instructor instead. It also depends on the field. For example, we could think about some of the sciences where you can more easily automate material that is quantifiable and objective. And also areas that depend a lot on practice. Think about mathematics, think about foreign language instruction, and you can automate more of that. I think you may just see a blend of that, two instructors, if you will, one who is a robot, maybe literally, or software, and one who is human and in person. Great questions, Felix. The moderator tells me we're almost out of time. Do we have any more questions? I would be delighted to hear them.
Unfortunately, for want of time, we may not be able to take more questions, but we really do appreciate your efforts, your time, and on behalf of the Institute of Education, we wish to thank you very much for that masterpiece which you delivered. That was Brian Alexander of Centenary College, Louisiana, United States of America. We wish to invite you some other time to our conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to meet you virtually. I look forward to hearing from you. I just put one of my websites in the chat. I would love to hear from you later. Thank you for the opportunity. Everybody have a good evening, a good rest of your conference, and be safe.
Thank you very much. And so, our beloved distinguished participants, we come to the end of part 1 of the 2022 International Virtual Conference of the Institute of Education. And so we will be moving on to part 2 of the conference, and that is the plenary session. We will be splitting the conference into two groups, into two technical groups. Group 1 will be led by Dr. Edna Ogu. She will be chairing that technical group, while we have Dr. Emmanuel Orji as rapporteur. Then the second group will have Professor Sam Ogwoke as chairman of that group, with Dr. Felix Dike as rapporteur. Dear participants, you may find yourself in one group or the other, wherever you find yourself. We hope that you do make meaningful impacts and benefits from the discussions going on there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I come in now? Moderator. Moderator, can I come? Okay. They're splitting it. Okay. That means so.
So in the list here, I have up to 13 candidates to present. But I think I'll start with those who are present here now. And Dr. Grace Ngozi Omeje is not around yet. Number 2, Chinonso Igwesi. Are you there? Igwesi. Chinonso Igwesi. Not there. Igwesi, are you there? Can you hear me? Dr. Chinonso Igwesi. You say he's there. Do you go to the next person? Okay. Ifeanyi